Hello! I'd like to introduce everyone to the Monte Cristo Bookshop. We've been open here for 2 months. We were at another spot 2 blocks down the road for 6 months. The store began in December 2012 by me and my wife, Gina. My name's Chris. We're both locals. Gina's from Waterford, I'm from East Lyme. We were born in London. And we decided to start a bookstore downtown. And it was fun. A lot of books. A lot of reading too, and learning experience working with the public, the community. One of the aspects of having a store in New London is that I felt that New London is a very event-oriented type of town. You know, the art galleries have their openings, the clubs have their bands that play, the Guard Art Center, the poetry readings at the coffee shops. And we thought, we're going to have a bookstore, we're going to have authors come in here, we're going to have to do events. So we've done about 50 events so far, and we've got a lot more coming up. And we have authors of all different genres, makes and models. So we're here tonight with Officer Patterson. I'm pretty excited about this. He came in and dropped off his book about a month ago, and then you were in a hurry, and you left. You left. So I just looked through it and I'm like, oh wow. And I just got sucked into it. I'm sure if you've read it before, you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, it was pretty great to be able to book an event and have you come speak here and present here. I don't really know much about John's resume, except he was a police officer for state police, Troop E, and you know, he saw some things, and he felt like he had to write a book about it. So John and Deborah are going to do a presentation, and then after that, you can ask questions.
And actually, we found it works if you want to ask questions as we're talking, that's fine also.
Like an open forum.
Yeah, it could,
Q&A.
totally open forum. All right, well, thanks for having us.
And let me know if you want to queue up the...
Oh, yeah.
I'll do that. Okay.
Can everybody hear us in the back?
Just say yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There is, John wrote the book, and about 5 or 6 years ago asked me if I would do some interviews for him and interview some of the people who had been involved in his life, his lieutenant in the unit, his mom, who's sitting right there, his therapist, and his wife. And he also asked me to do some editing for him, so that's how I became involved in the book. And then Jim Ben, who's not here with us tonight, who's my husband, who writes the World War II Billy Boyle series, is actually doing his book launch event in Lyme tonight, so it's kind of, or he would have been here. And we brought Jim on board just because he had the experience in writing books, and so he went through it and really added a nice little finishing touch, you know, just sort of make it an even better read. But basically, this book is John's. It's John's words, which sometimes can be a little harsh and a little hard to listen to, so I'm just going to warn you ahead of time that if you object to any words, you might want to leave now. That's here. It's X-rated. But I want to thank you for coming tonight, and the book's been out, just a few months, about 3
months to
yeah. So it's newly released. And it took a lot of courage and dedication on John's part to write this book. He began writing as part of his therapy process when his therapist suggested that he keep a pad and a pen next to his bed and write down the dreams that he was having. And we'll talk a little bit about post-traumatic stress disorder as I'm talking, but John suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder when part of that is nightmares. One of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder is nightmares. So he suggested that John write down some of his dreams, and John found that to be helpful and kept writing. He started writing more, and it was very cathartic for John to write, but he also wrote it in the hopes that his writing it would help someone else who was a state trooper or other first responder who might be dealing with the same sort of issues that John was dealing with, and you know, maybe being afraid to get help or ask for help because in the force, you're not supposed to. It's not what's usual. So this is a book that tells the truth about what can happen to an officer in the line of duty. It's not a book that many police officers or other first responders would write because it goes against the very grain of the nature of the job. And that is, you have to stay in control and to not acknowledge the impact of what you're doing on you. The impact, of course, varies among different officers, and not everybody's going to see what John saw and do what John had to do in the line of duty. But basically, any first responder is impacted by their job. It just can't be helped. I've known John since he was in elementary school. He and my oldest son, and both my sons, have been friends forever. And when he asked me to be part of this book, I just felt very, very honored. John and my son and another state trooper, Stoll Burnham, went on vacation together. I guess I need to backtrack a little bit. That John was involved in 2 justified shootings in the first 6 years of his career, which is unheard of in the Connecticut State Police Force. There has never been no one's ever shot and killed 2 individuals before nor since then. And that is what precipitated the post-traumatic stress disorder for John. And after the first shooting, when I heard about that, I was so worried for John and what the impact would be, because I'd been working in the field of trauma for probably about 15 years by then, and I knew what trauma did to people. And about 3 months after the shooting, we went on vacation together. John and I talked quite a bit about the event at that time. But what I remember most is John's asking me, "Debbie, do you think there's something wrong with me that doesn't bother me that I shot and killed somebody?" And in my head, I'm like, uh-huh. And to John, I'm like, well, no, I'm glad everything's okay, but don't be surprised if it doesn't catch up with you later on. That very often with post-traumatic stress disorder, there's a delayed onset. It can go months before you're impacted. It can go years before you see the impact of an event like that. John has, he's a sweetheart. That's all I can say about John. And he's this real tough guy at the same time. And anybody that knows him knows both sides of this guy. And so, after the first shooting, the reality of what he had done only set in for him when the scene was cleared and they brought him back for a last look around at what was left. And that's when he saw the bullet casings scattered around the driveway. And you have to remember that at this time, he was 26 years old. And I quote from the book, "It had really happened. I killed a man. I kept telling myself, fuck him. He was trying to kill me, but I killed him before he could kill me. Fuck it. My youth and arrogance had a lot to do with this. I saw it as survival of the fittest and that I had won. Maybe it was my pride, maybe relief at being alive, maybe guilt and shame as well. Later that night, when I got home, Wendy, his wife, said something that was simple, profound, yet insightful. She said, 'I knew you carried a gun, but I never thought you would have to use it.' That was exactly how I felt. Police officers carry a gun, but few fully realize the possibility that they may have to use it. Years later, the statement still rings true. I knew I carried a gun for a living, but I never believed I would use it to take the life of another human being. But it had happened, a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. It was over, or so I thought." End quote. Over the next year, John had some nightmares and some memory issues as a result of the shooting, but in general felt that life was moving forward, and by September the following year, he felt that life was back to normal. On December 27th, 1998, 27 months after the first shooting, and 5 weeks after the birth of his daughter Amelia, all that changed. John was once again put into the position of using deadly force against a perpetrator, this one with a gun pointing at John's head. John writes about the second shooting, and I quote, "When I reflected on the events of the night before falling asleep, I was glad that I had been involved in the first shooting, because it mentally prepared me. My previous experience of dealing with an armed suspect had allowed me to react more quickly and effectively in this incident. If I hadn't shot and killed somebody 2 years earlier, I may have hesitated in killing Joseph Parsons, which may have resulted in my death or the death of my friend Stowe, and possibly other deaths in that parking lot. This all happened in a McDonald's parking lot. I also knew what lay ahead in terms of the investigations. I'd been through all the bullshit before. What I didn't know was what lay ahead emotionally and how hard I would fall from this fateful evening. But that night I went to bed and slept like a baby." End quote. This was the incident that for John triggered his post-traumatic stress disorder. 6 years on the force, and John had shot and killed 2 men in the line of duty. He was 28 years old. As I said, this had never happened before or since in the long history of the Connecticut State Police. Traumatized is a story of what followed. John's descent into severe depression, addiction, family discord, sleepless nights, nightmares, despondency, and despair. We see it in our first responders. We see it in our military vets. Many try to mask it, but it doesn't work. The suicide rate among police is high. The divorce rate among police is high. Addictions are rampant. And it's not out of weakness or somebody's ability not to deal. Our bodies are not made to withstand constant assault and anxiety. Hypervigilance, the need to always be on the lookout, raises stress hormones to unhealthy levels, which create post-traumatic stress disorder. In Traumatized, John tells his story in a brutally honest fashion. He spares us no details. And his job didn't get easier after the shootings. In fact, in many ways, it got harder. John describes his trip into hell and the long, slow journey back out. He discusses the impact on his family from Wendy's perspective. Wendy will often ask me if she is ever going to get her Johnny back. How old were you when you got married?
27?
27. The guy she married. The hardest thing for me is to tell her the truth. No, that Johnny will never come back. He was forever tarnished by everything that he witnessed and participated in. But the new John, the John we have here with us tonight, I wouldn't trade for anything. As I said, part of what I did for this book was to interview key persons in John's life during the time he was impacted by the events. One of those individuals was Lieutenant John Rich, John's supervisor after the second shooting, who said, and I quote, "John is a hero of the department. He is not a hero because he shot and killed someone in the line of duty. He is a hero because he rose to the occasion of taking the necessary steps to deal with the aftermath." End quote. And those steps led to many changes in the department. John fought for mental health services, changes in protocols for dealing with incidents involving the use of deadly force, and along with others, participated in the development of a peer support group. These changes have significant impact in the field. In the 2012 Suicide Police Report published by Badge of Life, for the first time since they began keeping statistics of police officer suicides, the suicide rate dropped in 2012, which they attribute to more units having peer support groups following what John's units did, what the Connecticut State did. And also that more of the younger officers are willing to go for help before there are significant problems. These are things that John fought for and continues to fight for. In his work in dealing with post-traumatic stress. This little thing is not big enough for my fingers. A friend of mine, Linda, who's not here with us tonight, and has dealt with her own traumas and has post-traumatic stress disorder herself, summed it up beautifully. Cops may wear Kevlar vests, but that doesn't keep their hearts from being broken. And now John is going to read a chapter from the book. Slowly he's going to read.
Practicing, I yelled at after the last.
So fast.
I'm trying to get it over as quickly as possible. It was a hot August night in 1996. To be exact, it was August 10th, 10:47 p.m.
Very good.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's good.
It still reads in my mind like a police report, short, clipped, precise. The troopy dispatcher sent 2 of us to an address in Jewett City, only minutes away. At first, it was just another domestic dispute, not uncommon on a humid summer night. As we arrived, the dispatcher told us the guy we were looking for was armed with a gun. Things changed. Trooper Keith White and I approached the house, one in a row of two-story homes, set closely together, with a park across the street and a stream at their backs. There were worse places in Jewett City. Right, Mike?
Very much so.
There was only a couple of steps to the front of the house. The only thing separating this house from the neighbors was a driveway of dirt, gravel, and a few clumps of grass. We saw a man exit from the side door into the driveway. There was something long in his hand. At first I thought it was a stick, about 2 feet long. We shined our flashlights on him, and in the narrow space between the two homes saw it was a bayonet. Drop the bayonet, get down on the ground, we probably both yelled or something close. Our weapons were drawn, flashlights on him. Fuck you, if you want the knife, come and get it, the guy said. That I remember exactly. Then he walked back into the house as if greeting cops with a 2-foot pig sticker was a normal Saturday night event. That was Jim. He locked the door behind him and began screaming at the people still inside. We checked the windows and could see this individual standing in the kitchen at the rear of the house, the bayonet still in his hand. The front door opened and another male exited. He identified himself as Louis Lemieux, and as we searched him, he told us the guy with the bayonet was Joseph Cody. Lemieux was clean and went on to tell us that Cody was intoxicated and had been snorting cocaine. This was not good news, not for us or the people inside. Lemieux told us his girlfriend, Julie Michelson, was still in the house, along with Cody's girlfriend, Patricia Hackett, and her son, James Hackett. Fucking great. 2 women, a kid, and a coked-up guy with a big knife. As we took in this information, the front door crashed open, and Julie, Patricia, and James came running out. Cody at their heels with bayonet in hand. Keith and I stepped in front of the civilians, weapons drawn. At the sight of us, Cody slammed the front door shut and locked it. For a second, it seemed as if the worst had passed. Cody was alone in the house, and time was on our side. But then Patricia Hackett told us something Lemieux had not. That Joseph Cody's 10-year-old son, Michael, was in the upstairs bedroom. Damn. I immediately notified Troop B that we had an armed, barricaded subject with a possible hostage and requested backup. Keith and I went to the side of the house and began to talk with Cody through the kitchen window. Keith had dealt with Cody before twice and said it was important to keep him talking. We talked and Cody's demeanor shifted several times. He seemed irrational, which I attributed to the influence of booze and drugs. He never loosened his grip on the bayonet and repeatedly threatened to harm us if we tried to enter his house and arrest him. Keith and I used any means we could get to get Cody to drop the weapon and give himself up. A few times we holstered our weapons and tried to coax him out, telling him everything would be okay. He didn't bite and became more irritated when Keith and I drew our weapons again as we continued to keep the conversation going. We weren't going to endanger ourselves by not having weapons at the ready if he burst out of the door. If he wanted a confrontation, we were ready. We heard the sirens in the distance, a reassuring sound that told us help was on the way. The backup arrived and established a perimeter around the house. The place wasn't that big, but Keith and I had been able to cover all possible exits. We watched Cody as he studied the troopers surrounding the place. Maybe that got through the fog of alcohol and coke, or maybe he had no idea what to do next. But in a few minutes, he came to the door with his son, Michael. He told us Michael could leave as soon as he was dressed. He had one arm around his son's shoulder, just like any dad at home with his kid. The other hand still held the bayonet. He shut the door and a full 5 minutes passed. It seemed like forever. Could we count on him to keep his word? Did we have any other choice? Was it a trap, or was this Cody's way of ending the standoff? Finally, Joseph Cody appeared at the kitchen door, opened it, and invited us in. We followed, and he took a seat at the kitchen table with his son. The bayonet was lying on the table in front of him. For the first time that night, it was not in his hand, but close. The first order of business was to get Michael out safely. We did, and then placed Cody under arrest. There was no further incident. All the screaming, all the threats, all the potential for blood was gone. Police routine took over. Cody was charged with disorderly conduct, threatening reckless endangerment first, and risk of injury to a minor. He was transported to Bacchus Hospital in Norwich for a psychological evaluation, after which he was brought to Troop B, where he was processed and held on a cash bond. Another Saturday night in Jewett City. After Keith and I got back to the troop, we went over what had happened. It's a regular thing in the department, to debrief and talk about what could have gone down if things hadn't worked out. We both were clear that Cody would have been shot dead if he had made a move to attack any of the occupants of the house or us. Neither of us hesitated at the thought of killing another human being if it proved necessary. As a police officer, I was glad I hadn't wavered in my determination to use deadly force, if called to. As a person, it felt strange to have such a mindset, but I knew that at some point in my career, I might be faced with that choice, and was glad I felt ready. There was so much I didn't know. Better that time?
Very good job.
One more chapter.
One more chapter. Joe. It was Tuesday, September 3rd, 1996. Less than a month had passed since the incident with Joseph Cody and the bayonet. I was working the evening shift with my wingman, Trooper Jay Gordon. I was patrolling the towns of Lisbon and Sprague, and Jay was covering the borough of Jewett City, along with the towns of Griswold and Voluntown. Jewett City was by far the busiest place to work in our troop area, so it was common for the trooper who patrolled Lisbon and Sprague to gravitate towards Jewett City for a faster response time in case of a problem, which is what I was doing that night, and for good reason. Jewett City was a haven for criminals. It's amazing no one has sued John yet for all his Jewett City comments, but we'll see. It's early. It's true.
You can only sue him if it isn't true.
It is located between the cities of Norwich and Willimantic, the heroin capital of the United States, according to one national news agency. And the cost of living in this 1 square mile town is a lot lower than in either of the larger cities. The majority of people who lived in Jewett City were transient, and many residents rented property. Because the Jewett City Police Department had disbanded a few years prior, the Connecticut State Police had taken over police services in the town. Around 7 p.m., Jay and I were dispatched to 63 Ashland Street in Jewett City to investigate an intoxicated male who was threatening to harm himself and his sister. It was a familiar address. The troopy desk trooper advised us the person attempting to harm himself was Joseph Cody. I filled Jay in about the previous incident and Cody's propensity for violence. Based on the last go-round, I quickly requested backup from the troop. When we arrived, I immediately drew my weapon and approached Cody's dirt driveway. This time, it was still light out. We could see things clearly. The narrow, closed space between the houses, kids' toys scattered in the neighbor's backyard. We approached Cody's front door and could see him through the front window. As we walked closer, he moved to the back of the residence towards the kitchen, the place where he'd last given himself up. Walking down the driveway, we followed his movements, watching him through the windows of his house. Cody pulled a large knife from a kitchen cabinet drawer. Holding the knife in his right hand, he grabbed a beer with the other and began to drink. I knew at that exact moment that Jay and I were going to have to kill Joseph Cody based on our previous interaction with him in the police institution. This knife was not going to end up lying on the kitchen table. I told Jay what I was thinking. Jay looked at me with a blank stare for a split second and quickly snapped back into reality. I knew it was a lot to absorb and that my previous brush with Cody prepared me for this reality. The situation hit me in the pit of my stomach and I felt physically sick at the knowledge of what was coming to pass. Cody was going to force things farther this time, far enough so there wouldn't be a next time. My training and perhaps my youth allowed me to brush my feelings aside in order to concentrate on the task at hand. Focus was important. We had to think about bystanders, others who might still be in the house, ourselves, our loved ones who expected us to come home tonight. Jay put his gun in his left hand and wiped the sweat off his right hand onto his uniform pants. He returned his gun to his right hand. We were both prepared for battle. Cody was wearing khaki shorts with no shirt, and again he appeared to be intoxicated or under the influence of drugs. While he was still drinking his beer, I yelled to him to put the knife down and come outside and talk to us. "If I see one motherfucker walk into this house, I will kill him," Cody yelled as he opened the kitchen window. I told him again to drop the knife. "Come inside and take it from me," he yelled, familiar words. As Cody and I went back and forth, Jay saw a group of kids playing in the backyard of the neighboring house. He told them to get inside and stay there. As he did this, I heard Cody call his 2 dogs into the kitchen. He got down on one knee and hugged and kissed them, an oddly normal scene in a terribly abnormal situation. He sobbed and said goodbye to them. Goodbye. As I heard that, a nervous calm came over me. I knew that something bad was about to happen. Not the kind of bad we see every day, but really bad. The kind of bad that never goes away. I thought about going home to my family. If getting there meant shooting and killing Cody, I felt at peace with it. Cody opened the kitchen door and stood on the top step of his porch. He was close, only a few steps away. In the confined space between the homes, there was no room to maneuver. Jay and I retreated to the rear of the neighbor's residence in an attempt to put the safest distance between ourselves and Cody. 21 feet is the prescribed distance between a police officer and someone armed with a knife. Jay and I were fewer than 15 feet away and nowhere else to go, and still maintain visual contact. As soon as he stepped outside, I had the front sight of my Beretta 9mm fixed on his head. We're taught at the academy to shoot twice to the body, then once to the head, the body being the bigger target. The idea is that more damage can be done to the body because of all the internal organs. But someone could be wearing a bulletproof vest, so you take the shot to the head as well. I wasn't taking any chances. If he charged us, there would be no time for a second shot or a third shot. I wanted to end the threat with one shot, so I kept the sight square on his head. "You better kill me," Cody shouted. "You better shoot, shoot, shoot." He took another step down the porch stairs with one hand still clutching the beer, his other the knife. "You better kill me before I kill you." Jay and I stepped backwards, distancing ourselves once more from Cody, who'd come a few feet closer, but we'd run out of driveway. With the knife in his left hand, Cody took a last swig from his beer, then threw the bottle to the ground. It shattered on the stones. He switched the knife to his right hand and ran towards us, the blade extended. "Stop!" I yelled. Cody ignored me. There was no time for anything else. I fired my Beretta 9mm 4, maybe 5 times. As soon as I fired my weapon, Jay fired his. Mine jammed. As I cleared the jam and reloaded with a full magazine, Cody fell face down in the gravel driveway, a few feet from us, the knife still clenched in his right hand. Everything had happened in seconds, in a confined space with houses looming above us on both sides. But in my mind, it had all happened in slow motion, as if every second were crystal clear, drawn out, and burned into my memory. Jay was yelling, "Joe, Joe, Joe," repeatedly as we approached him, lying in the driveway of his home, dying. I saw bullet holes in the top of Cody's head and what appeared to be exit wounds on his back. I was certain I had inflicted the fatal shot to the head, and I had also shot off his pinky. None of that mattered now, though. Jay and I called in a code A, shots fired, to Troop B. We needed to see if Cody was still alive and get the knife out of his hand. I knew it was doubtful that it could harm anyone at that point, but our training took over. I checked the street and saw 2 teenage girls watching the drama unfold directly across from the driveway. They couldn't have been any older than 13 or 14. I yelled at them to get the fuck out of there, which they did. I kicked the knife out of Cody's hand while Jay checks Cody's injuries and tried to help him until the ambulance arrived. I could hear Cody gurgling over the sounds of distant sirens, the backup I had requested when we first arrived. The distant shrill sound, drawing closer, comforted me. It was over and help was on the way. An ambulance for Cody, support for us. Cody got the ambulance, but it did him no good. As for support, I had no clue what was about to happen. I thought the ordeal was over. Every moment of this September evening is still with me, but what has stuck with me most over the years are Jay's screams of "Joe, Joe, Joe." Years later, chills still run through my body whenever I think about it. So those are the first 2 chapters of the book and the beginning of what became a very traumatic next, how many years? Well, he just retired. That was 2 years into, how many years into your 20 years was that?
It's 6 and 8, right? 96, 98. No, 4 and 6.
4 and 6, 4 years.
Yeah.
So,
Do you want to play the? Try to play that. So,
oh,
we have it. Do you want to try playing it?
Yeah, sure.
Play
What
that.
are you playing?
CD?
do you have the CD?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have it. Yeah, what is on the CD?
Oh yeah, let's introduce that. So John has a CD from the second shooting of the dispatcher, and the police who were involved. I said the second shooting had happened in McDonald's parking lot. No cell phones back then. The man who called in on a payphone, who called the dispatcher, and the dispatchers, John, you can hear the people from McDonald's in the background yelling, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. You can hear John. And what's important, the reason that we play this, what was important for John is hearing the fear, the fear building as this whole incident. It's a 5-minute tape, but you can just hear the fear building in everyone, John included.
I just want to test it and see what it sounds like.
Okay.
Okay.
No problem. So these are the radio transmissions. Let's wrap a little bit more, or is that it?
So I don't know if you've heard that it's just Joseph Parsons threatened to kill any police officer that tried to stop him.
So he was involved in an accident and left the scene.
There's a glove letter in the back.
No, it should clear it up. This guy called 911. Saw him pulling. Acting crazy.
And they actually, he was rather kept him there, like, until the police could come.
That was me.
He's on the north side of the building. Get to the north side of the building. Yep. The north side of the building. Right. Now the rear or the front? Towards the rear. Okay. It's a car. I'll try to direct you out. What are you wearing, sir? Sure. There. Roger, Yeah, we gotta get it.
Chris, that's good. Thank you. They have better music over there.
So at this point, we'd love to answer any questions and hear any comments that you might have.
I think Chris has some questions.
I have questions. I have a lot of questions.
Right.
Good. Fire
How
away.
about I join you up there?
Excellent.
Grab a seat. Be my interview chair. All right. First things first. How long did it take you to write the book?
It took about 10 years. Too long, but
10 years from when you contemplated starting to write?
yeah, about 10 years when I started writing. So I mean, it was a long process. I kind of started with an outline and listed certain things that bothered me.
Why did it take 10 years?
Because I'm slow.
Yeah.
No, I mean other responsibilities, and you, like anything else, you start something, you put it away, and things come back. And
Were you worried about what you would put into it?
no.
Were you worried that maybe there'd be repercussions for saying too much?
Mike's working here. That's why he's laughing. No, I can care less about what people think of me.
No, I'm thinking about the meeting with Colonel Barry at the troop. The I'll out resume anybody.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to share that all-out resume, everybody, story?
Well, let's put it this way. John wasn't hesitant to speak his mind.
And the other part of that is having multiple authors, like so John would give me stuff, and then it would take me time to either do the interviews or to take what he had written and edit it, and then my husband became involved. So I think having more than one author also added to the.
Yeah, it definitely did reading through it. Absolutely. Did it take you 10 years to work with him, or was this something that
We
he
were working together. I'd say 5 or 6 years easily.
right through it?
Yeah.
Yeah, writing a book's a pretty taxing experience as well.
We had little kids and post-traumatic stress disorder, which, for those of you who don't know, post-traumatic stress disorder, people are depressed, don't have a lot of energy. John, who had always been very physically fit, stopped working out. So the fact that he wrote a book is amazing to me.
If anyone has any
Just
questions.
going along that topic, how long, you said you started it for therapy, your therapist recommended it.
Mhm.
How long did you do it for therapy before you decided that it might become a book? How long was that process?
Well, just when I started therapy and going through the process of learning how to, kind of work through things myself, that's when I sort of figured out that, okay, I kind of can explain why I'm having these dreams and stuff like that. So it'd be best to get it down on paper and maybe try to help some other people that have witnessed gruesome things for many years and need help. So.
There was no requirement for an officer to have counseling after the first incident? Nothing, it was
No.
just do your job and go
Pretty
back?
much. Yeah,
Wow.
after the first, like, take tomorrow off and come back the next day.
It's kind of amazing, it wasn't
So-
that long ago.
Right.
Even in the military, I was looking this up in the Army now. Same with the Marines. If you're involved in a firefight for the first time, you're working up to that. If you're involved for the first time, they bring you back to battlefield psychologists before you go out again with your unit. Everyone that was involved with the shooting, you come back, you debrief, they talk about who shot what and where, and then they discuss it with you, and they actually whittle down who in the unit is capable of combat. And it's something like less than 10% can go into combat regularly and be okay with it.
So for the most part, I mean, things have gotten a little bit better. I mean, when we were in the academy, they never mentioned anything like that. You could be involved in anything like that. But now they do have peer support people come in
Stops.
and give a block and stuff like that to kind of explain, hey, if you are going through these things, it's okay to call us and we'll help you. And it's anonymous and stuff like that. And, you know, if you look at the numbers when the program was established, it would be shocking to you that, you know, I think in the first month there's 1,200 troopers. I think 600 or 700 people called the first month.
Wow.
I mean, the numbers are staggering. I mean, like I said, it could be substance abuse, it could be family discord, and all these other things, problems at work, you know, financial problems. So there's things in place now that we weren't afforded when we were on the job.
And just along those same lines,
I think there's still a huge stigma for mental health, no matter what reason it is. I have a friend that volunteers at the Pond House, and she's a very empathetic person, and she'll say, nobody ever donates money to the Pond House. I mean, people donate to cancer, they donate to heart, they donate to, but nobody donates to the Pond House. I mean, you don't even admit that you have a family member or yourself that might need that kind of help. And so that's a societal type thing.
absolutely.
And we all know that we all, or every one of us needs help at some point in our life.
True.
You know?
And they paid for, the EAP, when this happened to John, would pay for 6 sessions with the EAP. And that was it. And after that, if you wanted therapy, you were on your own. And that's one of the big things that John helped change. Is it unlimited therapy now, or?
I think you're still, I mean, you get more visits, and you know, they can tweak it where, you know, you get 10 visits now. So you get 10 visits, but then you can say, well, I think I'm having a problem in this area, and they'll give you 10 for that.
Okay.
I have a problem in this, they'll give you 10 for that. So I mean, there are ways to work around it where you kind of get the help that you need.
That affects your ability to do your job. You know, you have to be able to handle your job.
I got a question for you. That isn't covered by workman's comp or anything like that? Still.
Still not covered by those. But they don't recognize, I mean, the heart and hypertension laws in the state of Connecticut changed after another trooper, Gavage, Sean killed somebody, I think killingly in a year before I did, 1995. 94, 95. So he was able to retire because he was having anxiety issues and heart-related issues, high blood pressure and stuff like that. So he was able
And
to
they
retire.
found out that every cop
Yeah.
suffered from that, so they
Exactly.
said no more.
He was the last person to retire in the state of Connecticut with heart and hypertension, and after that, they're like, well, that's a bunch of bullshit. Anybody can say they have issues with anxiety and heart problems and can retire at any time. So instead of looking at a case-by-case basis, they just totally got rid of it. So,
You'd have to prove that it was because of the occupation.
right.
Just to get off topic, but Doug Gavage's shooting was a particularly nasty one too. That was
Scary.
a prolonged firefight.
Where was that?
It's killing it, right?
Killing
Town
Pomfret.
center or something like that.
In a nutshell, a grocery store burglary was interrupted. He was on traffic. He intercepted the car, chased it into a cemetery. Both of them crashed, and then they started shooting at each other. And he was the one that came out on top. Thank God.
How do you guys feel about gun control?
Depends on who's got
Enough
the guns.
Probably
You're
not
not
the
buying
right
that one?
atmosphere.
I said you're not biting that one?
Well, I mean, if you're smart about it, I'll probably gonna get hammered for this, but if people understand and follow the safety rules and stuff like that, I think it would be smarter to be armed than unarmed. If you look at the statistics in the country, where the majority of people are armed within a certain town, there's no crime there, because people know that all these people are armed and they're not gonna go in there and commit crimes. They're not gonna break in your house if they know you're armed. And the reason why all these shootings are happening in schools is because
They're gun
they
free
know
zones.
that kids don't bring guns to schools, so they know they're not going to encounter anyone with a gun when they go into a school.
Yeah.
It's easy. Movie theaters, who brings a gun to a movie theater? They're cowards. They target people that they know are unarmed you're going to get least resistance from these places. Malls, I mean, it's common sense.
Like one of those things, the reason why they think that Adam Lanza, the Newtown shooter, went to the elementary school instead of the high school, which he drove by. He wasn't a big guy. So if he went in there and started shooting, you know, some fullback on the football team might have disarmed him.
It was very easy for him.
What do your the senior administrators or anyone up in the state of Connecticut police, you know, what do they think of the book, or have you heard from anyone, or?
Everyone that's read it, and I don't think there's anybody who really is in the upper echelon, have liked it. But I mean, it's true. So if they read it, I don't know why they'd be upset. 'Cause, I mean, I don't. Other than the lack of support that they gave me, I mean, I really don't hammer. For the most part, maybe one individual I kind of hit kind of hard, but as Mike would attest, that's deserving.
I read the book yet, but I can already tell.
Maybe my poem, but that's, if people know me, that's me.
The book
That's
ends
the
with a
truth.
poem that he read at his retirement party. That I tried to keep out of the book, but I didn't succeed. I thought about
It's not
keeping
a
several
poetry book.
things.
Huh?
It's not a poetry
Good poem.
book, yeah.
Good poem. Though.
It's an interesting poem. Yeah.
So I was writing down questions as
Sure.
as you were reading.
Mhm.
It seems like both the incidences that happened were just completely different than each other. You know, one was like came out of the blue, and the other one was more anticipated.
Yeah, but you know, the good thing is each incident we were given the right information, so we kind of knew going in what we were going to get involved in and stuff like that. But as far as, I mean, they're very similar in the sense that they both wanted to die and they didn't have the balls to do it themselves. So of course they asked me to do it.
The second shooting was also an outsider. Like John will tell you, like Jewett City is a very confined area, so we're dealing with the same people week in and week out. Like, you know, I knew John before the first shooting, but I was still up at Troop K, but all the rest of the people, other than Cody, obviously, you know, we're just dealing with them. You know, they never went away. It's not like, oh, you got shot, so maybe I better cool my jets. Like this kid Lemieux, he didn't slow down a bit.
It's like they're always kind of acting as the police as like a lifestyle.
That's how they brought up.
Yeah,
It's
it's
Lisa
unfortunate.
bad.
You know, there's books written on where that came from. There's a great book called "Don't Shoot" by David Wright. Is that his name? And he discusses how the gang violence in Boston, how they managed to curb the murdering that was happening there by eliminating the guns off getting them out of their hands. But it's very interesting how there's some people that are just brought up in a culture that they're almost being adverse to the police is kind of a way of life, you know, and for it to be in a suburban Connecticut town, you know, it's kind of a surprise in a way, even given the income levels, you know.
It's in close proximity to 4 prisons too, so a lot of them get out of jail and they gravitate towards Jewett City because of the drugs and the cheap rents.
And I know that Jewett City doesn't have its own police force, but I think the police have a presence there.
Well, they used to have their own police force, but the problem is, I mean, when I worked there, they didn't even want us to drive. It's really 0.8 of a square mile, the town. So they were pissed when the state police drove into the town. They like pretty much would follow us in the cars.
Yeah.
But the problem is with the guys that worked there, they knew everybody in town because they were from Jewett City. So they never arrested nobody.
Mm.
So they'd go to a bar fight where someone got stabbed and they say, you know, put a Band-Aid on that, I'll drive it.
Rental chaperones.
Basically. So I mean, when we went there, we didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And we arrested everybody, so it's really like us. But as far as gun control, because he just reminded me of something, you know, they're making it harder for citizens to get guns, right? Ammunition's going up, it's a pain in the ass to get a weapon and stuff like that. I can go anywhere in this world, you know, within a half an hour, buy a gun off the street. probably a third of what you can buy it for in the store.
In this country, but not in other countries.
I can go anywhere in this world and buy a gun. Guaranteed.
They're everywhere.
Well, I know.
And that's the problem, because and that's what you have to look at. I mean, you can be totally against guns and gun violence, which, I mean, I'm obviously against gun violence, but I mean, as far as protection and stuff like that, that's why I look at it.
You have to understand.
If you think you need it and you're safe about it, then you should have it. If you're against it, you don't need it. It's fine.
You have to understand too, criminals adapt. It's, you know, even if you took every gun in the world off the street, they'd
Yeah,
start making
fine.
pressure cooker bombs like they did in Boston.
You do something.
That's easy enough to do. All these kids did was strip down fireworks, put them in a pot, sealed it off, and you have yourself a bomb.
Sorry, I got off track.
Yeah, but it brought up something that I wanted about the two shootings. John took Jim and I, we wanted to go to the scenes where this happened. And, you know, we had both I'd read his book probably 20 times by then as I was working on it. And I sort of imagined this big space and there are these houses. But we're talking about one house at that wall and the next house might have started right here. So that was the driveway in between. That went from maybe here to length of the house was where, you know, where John's parents is sitting. There was nowhere for them to go with this guy running at them with a bayonet. I mean, so, and that McDonald's, the guy was up in the drive-through lane. I mean, again, these, you know, these very tight quarters with people all around and having to make these split-second decisions about how you're going to handle the situation. It's just, it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, and actually, I've been to that McDonald's before because I'm a Shoreline guy, and that's kind of far in from me. But I had a girlfriend that worked there in '99 when I was like 18 years old. So I think that was like after that.
Or Chief Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah,
Chet. Just kidding.
she's from Voluntown. Is that
Oh,
better?
much better.
A little bit.
No, but, you know,
So the book has been out, what, 2 months now?
Yes.
Yeah. Has anyone come to you, like in private, about
Yeah,
it?
I've gotten calls from people that thank me for writing and stuff like that. So, like I said, I did it. If one person, you know, had those sentiments, then you know what I did was right, and I feel good about it.
And between John, myself, and John's therapist, Mark Wall, we, from this book coming out, have had 3 clients, 3 state troopers who have come to us as clients.
Wow.
Even after our book launch party.
Clients.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a psychotherapist.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I work with trauma. And I heard that. Thank you. She's she's older than me and my oldest friend.
She had to point that
I
out.
have to say
Sorry
this.
to play that.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've been together.
I get to be a smart ass.
But, so and even immediately after the event, the book launch party, which was, you know, primarily family and then a bazillion state troopers and their spouses. And I want to say that spouses of troopers are also impacted. And parents of troopers are also impacted. The ripple out effect of what goes on is huge. But so many people came up to all of us afterwards and said, you know, I went through this, and you know, that resonated with what we were talking about at the event. So, and the reviews on Amazon. The last one was, I bought this book because I thought it was a James Patterson book. And I love James Patterson. But we gave it a 5-star. He said, I am so glad I made that mistake. I mean, just out of the blue, got it.
It's good.
It's a good, I mean, it's really a good book. I have given it to all of my clients who have post-traumatic stress disorder, not state troopers, but for all other reasons, whether they were molested as children, abused, and they resonate. He does such a good job of describing from the inside out what it's like to have post-traumatic stress disorder. He started gambling, you know, hard times at home, all sorts of things went down for John.
Yeah, I want to ask you more about the post-traumatic. You know, 'cause we talked about the incidences. When you say addiction, what are you referring to?
I had a gambling addiction
And
for just over a year.
why would you call that an addiction?
Well, it's like drugs, you know, you get hooked on it, and that's all you want to do, and don't pay attention to anything else other than that.
So the casinos.
Yeah, and oddly enough, I'm a police officer at the casino.
Oh.
So, come full circle. Yeah,
So you kind
very
of you're
strange.
facing the enemy.
Well, no, I mean it was a quick addiction, like I said, and it was powerful. But luckily, I got out with I think only losing like $2,000.
What games did you play?
Just blackjack.
Blackjack.
See, the problem is I won $2,000 in maybe 2 hours
That happens.
counting cards. I thought I could-
Is that what you thought you were doing?
No, I mean I was, but the problem is you gotta have people at the table that know how to play.
Yeah.
And when you don't, you lose. So I just kept losing. And
So you try to win it back.
always trying to win.
Yeah. That's rough.
Well, you always, I mean, like you said, as soon as you win $10, you lose.
Chase the
Because
wind.
you always want to come back, and they always give in.
Did you seek any treatment for that?
No.
When did you realize you had a problem with
I had shoulder surgery. I was under the influence of Oxycontin,
it?
which is bad shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know how these drug
There's a lot of
addicts
that in Jewett City, right?
survive on Oxycontin. Because I had, like, I think, like 5 milligrams, and I had no idea what it was. And they're buying 40 milligrams in the street.
Wow. Wow. So did your family find out about your gambling?
No,
Well, obviously.
yeah, way after the
But
fact,
not
so.
during it. So that was that.
No, I
was
mean,
it a
no one.
personal
I mean,
battle?
Mike worked with me. He didn't. I mean, he knew I was an asshole before I got involved in the shootings and acted a certain way. So, I mean, a lot of guys at work, I stayed the same way, I think, for
Still,
at
yesterday.
least 18 and a half years.
When we worked together, though, we did everything together.
Yeah,
Like, this is before all of us had kids. I think Keith Hoyt was the only one that had a family.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you see everybody every day, you really don't notice small changes in somebody's behavior. You know, because you're just with them all the time. You know.
It's hard growing up.
Yes.
Have you ever considered going into like the high schools of New London High or Jewett City or Allentown or places where there's a prevalence of kids that get into trouble because they, you know, don't know their.
Well, I mean, they have that every day. I mean, at some point they have to take responsibility for themselves, and I think it's a fault. You can only tell them so much how to live their lives, and it's up to them. And like I said, I grew up in East Lyme, so I had an easy childhood, and I had whatever I wanted. So, but
You grew up in East Lyme?
I just didn't know whether your story would be something.
Oh,
whether
yeah.
you
no,
were interested
like I
in
said, I mean, that they would want it. They would want to have to absorb it and take it in, and a lot of them don't for whatever reason. If it's their upbringing, like I said, I mean, I wouldn't want to live in the projects and have to deal with that crap every single day because that's I couldn't even imagine it. But at some point, you got to recognize that. Okay, if I go this way, all my friends are getting shot and killed. Do I want to do this? Live a good life for 15, 16, 17 years, or try to get out of it as best I can and go from there. I think they're not giving them enough choices.
Tell them what we saw yesterday on the playground.
Oh yeah, what school is that?
Nathan Hale School in New London. So an elementary school.
So Nathan Hale, so I'm helping. Yeah, the one they just redid. So I'm helping her son do grumps.
Stumps grinding.
See if them both together. Stump grinding. And like every half an hour, there's kids out on the playground and stuff like that. So we were having lunch. They brought us lunch. So we're sitting down, and these inner city kids were playing and tackling each other. And then they'd stand up and shoot you in the head. And then they tap you
And stab.
and start
And
stabbing
that's-
you in the stomach.
And that's all they did, was knocking each other
For
down,
20
stabbing
minutes.
them themselves.
Shooting each other in the head, stabbing each other. It was a big game to them. No one's paying attention.
She's a
Doesn't
middle
matter. I
school.
taught in New London for 19 years. I taught
You are a saint.
12 years. I have PTSD.
I'm sure you do.
I have post-traumatic school disorder.
That's a good. You should sell that.
Yeah, I mean, I face those kids and I don't get to carry a gun.
My cousin's wife was a school teacher in Hartford, and was it 3rd grade, 4th grade, 2nd grade, first grade, and she's getting called the C word by the kids.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have the
And all
parents
these
calling me
things.
that.
Well, that's not even the parents.
Threatening to beat me
Yeah,
up.
all this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, where's the support for that?
What? There is no support. That's the problem.
I was going to say, John was from a very unique family. Probably everybody was a police officer. From both his grandfathers to uncle, sister, cousins, extended family. There's probably, I don't know, they're all listed in the book. There's probably like 20. Those are close family members. But when my dad and Gary's dad became police officers, they were so respected. They were just, you know, they would be stopped on the street corner and it was, yes sir, what can I do for you, sir? You know, today, Nathan Hill School, who's teaching these kids respect? Who's teaching them that they have to listen to authority and obey rules? And what did some 8-year-old say to you one day when you were in uniform? Did you tell you to go F yourself?
They always did. They always did.
That's, I mean, how can, I don't think unless you've been involved in police work, that you ever have any idea what it really is like to be a police officer and to go out every single day and worry if you're going to go back to your station, your barracks, your anything, because quality of people that are out there with guns and knives and whatever else they can get their hands on and all drugged up. You don't know who's around the corner, and it's scary. It really is scary. And as a parent and his parent, and my daughter Maureen, thank God, just retired today
Oh,
from
did she?
Fairfax County Police, so that the two of them are off the streets, but it's a worry. It's a worry, and it's a scary thing. It really is.
And the
Thanks,
rest,
John.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
and the rest of John's years on the force were equally as stress-producing, and he became an investigator of child sexual abuse cases where he interviewed both the children and worked with the children and the perpetrators. Or all the suicides he had to investigate. When I always forget, CIU, Criminal Investigation Unit. It's TV. What's yours?
CIU.
Yeah, we just call it
CI.
CI, major crime.
Yeah. So they had to go out there and investigate all the major crimes. So it continued. You know, it didn't just stop with these 2 shootings.
And society at its lowest, really. You know, it's,
Yeah.
it's almost like you serve as a buffer to protect everyone else from the fringes coming in.
Right.
And but also we talked about the good stuff. You know, you find a lost kid and bring it home to their parents, or I don't know if you ever got to do over a baby. That would have been cool. No.
New. Thank God.
What would you say the percentage of your job you found to just really need rewarding?
Percentage for a career?
Yeah.
I'm torn. Sometimes it's 40, sometimes it's 60. Depends on what kind of whatever.
So today, what kind of
Huh?
book are you today?
Today it's minus. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I go back and forth. You know, like I said, it was, if it was shitty every single day, which I mean at times it was for long periods of times. I mean, I probably wouldn't have stayed on for 20 years, but it's like any other
It's the
job.
funny things that happen.
All jobs, like I said, unless you're a gym teacher at a school, your life sucks. If you're working. So I keep telling the kids, you're a gym teacher. Gym teacher. Gym teacher. Because you show up to work in shorts, right? Or a workout outfit when it's cold, and you don't have to grade any papers or give people homework. You throw a ball in the middle of the floor and say, I'll be back in an hour.
Oh, no, it's some gym teacher.
Best job on the face of the
You're
earth.
good talking
Teachers
to.
do that.
Huh?
You smile.
I said,
Huh? Be a gym teacher anyway, I don't care. See, in the one, you just throw them a gun. Back.
humor, and there's a lot about that in the book, sort of the humor that these guys end up using in order just
That's
to
gallows
stay
humor.
alive. Yeah, it's gallows humor, and I'm sure you used it in school too, just to survive. And you'll read about a lot of the funny things that they did just to sort of keep your morale up while in between.
I wanted to ask a question. I don't know if it was covered too much in the book. Are you religious?
I was religious.
Yeah. So they're still working on this one.
No, I mean, they pushed it for good reasons, because it is important to follow something, I think.
You had a good foundation.
Yes. However, if you read the book, my feelings changed quite a bit.
Is religion a thing in the police department? Are there a lot of officers? Are there any? I mean, that
I
you know,
mean,
kind
we
of-
really don't talk about religion. It's where we're going to eat. We hope you don't have to go to any bad calls.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
The top
we're
is
gonna
what
eat.
time we're eating and where. That's
Where we're going after shift.
yeah, exactly.
See, I mean, you're a government. You know, you're part of a government body, and you're supposed to be secular. But I wonder if a moral dilemma would happen during certain situations. You know,
No.
you'd be forced to make judgment calls.
So the safest way to answer it, I guess, is, you know, most police officers, I think, believe in a higher power. You're not going to find many that are very religious, though.
Mm.
You know, it's
I mean, in the sense of going to church every week.
exactly.
I
And
think
some
they
do.
see the worst of society, and it's hard to imagine. When you look at
Because the
people
thing with the
and see
church
what they
is,
do.
sorry, Mom, to cut you off. I mean, the church thing was, you know, my dad still talks about it, not to put him on the spot. He's a little
Which
taken
church
aback.
is this? What kind of?
To Catholic,
Catholic.
and I don't go to church. However, you know, especially investigating sexual assaults and stuff like that, I have a problem with the church on a whole protecting priests who repeatedly sexually assault.
Well, that's religion as an organized
kids,
bureaucracy.
stuff like that. Well, I mean, and like I said in the book, it's the biggest business. The Catholic Church is the biggest business in the entire world. They have more money.
Real estate.
If you probably put all the government's money together from all over the world, I think the Catholic Church would probably be second, like just below them. So I mean, just in general, there's bad priests in this religion, there's bad priests in this religion. Just as far as I'm concerned, in the Catholic Church, I think what sealed it for me, and I don't know if my dad was with me, you know, in the beginning I tried to reach out a little bit and have my kids go and stuff like that, but it was just too much. I think we were in church, and the priest, what does the priest give in the middle of the church? He gets up and talks by himself.
Sermon.
Homily. So he, in the homily, he's asking for the money that you give after the homily. See, it's been a while. There you go.
Yeah.
So anyways, the money that day was going towards the fund for a priest who sexually assaulted a child. Yes.
No.
I'm dead serious. This is for
Yeah, I don't
so-and-so. I'm dead serious. And that's the last time I've been to church.
It's interesting.
And that was
I wish Gina was here.
I
My
think
wife.
it's
a while ago.
She's on her way
The
down.
religion from.
Do
That'd
you
be
think
great.
any of your children will become police officers or go into the criminal justice field?
Gym teachers.
Gym teachers. No, I mean they've talked about it when I was in uniform and stuff like that. Say, I want to be a cop, I want to be a cop. Of course, my wife said, "You're not going to be a cop," which my parents did to me, which actually forced me to become a cop.
Oh, yeah, it's all you're doing.
No. They were smart. They wanted me to go in a different direction because they grew up with cops and they knew what it was like and try to keep me from that. And because of my family background, I kind of obviously
You
went
always
to
wanted
that.
to be a cop.
Right. But I mean, my youngest right now is I think it's just his age. Wants to be 7, wants to be a cop. But he's smarter than that.
Two things when you bring up religion that we talked about in the book. We may have discussed, well, it's in the book. Of course I can discuss it. John had an aunt who was was she in Hartford?
She was the first sergeant in the Hartford Police Department.
Okay.
First woman sergeant.
Who shot and killed someone in the line of duty. And basically, correct me if I'm wrong, went to her deathbed. She died early of breast cancer. but was sure that she wasn't going to heaven because she shot and killed somebody. And Bonnie talked about how they tried to, convince her that she had done this in the line of duty and she needed to, but, she still felt, and you talked about feeling that same way too, that, he was raised Catholic and he still held on to the beliefs about shalt not kill. And, and what did that mean in the grand scheme of things? That he had shot and killed 2 people, even though he had to.
Well, she was at the years where she shot and killed a person, and when she went back to police station, they said, "You okay?" And she said, "Yeah, okay." It's okay.
Yeah, that was it.
See you tomorrow.
Exactly.
She never was offered any help. She never went for any help. She was like 36 years old and felt she didn't need help. She could handle it all until she died at 43. So.
It's just an interest. It's just the philosophy is very interesting because you're acting as an actor of the state. The state has the I guess for lack of a better term, the monopoly on violence. So whether or not you intended to kill this person, that's you. I don't know, it's really interesting. I find that. They said there's no atheists in foxholes.
It's true.
Kind of the same idea.
Yes.
I'm always trying to fix things or trying to find common ground. And I know that the society has changed dramatically since I was a kid. But when I was a kid living in a town like this, small, we had neighborhood cops, neighborhood schools, and neighborhood teachers. Teachers all lived in town, cops lived in town, and people, lived right in town. And there was walkers. Everybody walked, and the cops walked, teachers walked, and everybody went to the church or the playground or the beach or whatever. So there was eyes on you at all times. I mean, if you did anything wrong, your parents got the phone call before you even got home. Because the teachers lived in town, so they could give you the evil eye throughout the weekend. And the cops the same way. And everybody. And I don't know, it seems like that's one of the things that has changed so dramatically. Which, because I see in New London, once in a while, they have, because I live right downtown, a couple blocks away. And, I see once in a while there's a big push to have bike cops. They seem like, they're pretty happy because they're fit and they ride around on their bikes. And you can talk to them a little bit. And then there's beat cops every once in a while, but it doesn't last long.
No, it doesn't.
Well, if there's a problem, she'll put them out, and when there's no problem, she'll take them back in.
It's just kind of nice to have, because if you do call, they come with the siren going, so by that time you see everybody running away.
Yeah.
And, the car sits there, and as soon as the car leaves, they come back again, And so if you had somebody circling the street, walking the street, you would have no problem.
It's the presence of the police cruisers themselves.
But things happen so fast, it's like, for a cop to respond on a bicycle or on foot, our area wasn't even as, broad as the area of New London. But there are calls that we've been to together where, all right, we got another incident going, one of you has to break. And,
Well, you have 3 towns, so that.
No, I'm talking about in Jewett City. What he said is exactly true. Like, Voluntown was, 2,500 people back then? So we only went up there sporadically. Sprague was the same way. Jewett City was it, and even if the people who lived in the outlying areas, they came to Jewett City to cause trouble because, like you said, it's about 1/8 of a mile, but there's 5 bars in there. You had that idiot dealing drugs out of the Oasis that always gave us a hard time. That's where they went to cause problems. And we did do some of that because one of our tricks was to park the cruisers in front of his office and then walk around on foot because then they're all screwing around in between the buildings.
We have that here with Waterford and Groton as well. A third of the crimes committed in New London are committed by citizens that don't live where.
Yep, very true.
And they come here on Friday and Saturday nights between 12 and 3. But we also have
So we're going to be out of here before 12, right?
Yeah, before 12. But we have 2 dozen bars in town. So
Yeah.
you get a whole bunch of people out, hundreds and hundreds of drunks here between 12 and 3. go. With any more questions?
In the book, you talked about the press release, how they didn't back you up. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think it's just everyone's getting sued for everything, you know, putting stuff out too quickly and not making sure that it's all lined up perfectly. And, you know, like I said, all they had to say was, like I said in the book, you know, if they look at something and everyone around them says it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, then why aren't they going to say that? You know, because that takes the pressure off the person that was involved in it. You know, because as soon as they said, you know,
The Amadou Diallo shooting took place up in Hartford too,
Yeah.
so they didn't want to make it look like they were rushing
Right.
to judgment.
like I said, a lot of that is, like Mike said, that, you know, that you know, thank God that one of the two guys wasn't a black guy, because that would change the dynamics of everything. You know, that just changed it for, and I don't know why, but it does.
The violent motive, you know, racism, you know.
Guy has a gun, he has a gun.
Yeah,
You know?
and then, yeah, you know.
Not really looking
I
at.
mean, if the guy's with a knife like this, how can you say it's a bad shoot? Or, you know, if he's putting a gun in my head, how is that not a good shoot? You know,
It's
you
also
just
the
gotta come out
area
and
that
say
we
it.
work. You know, you have to understand Connecticut is neon blue state, you know, very
Yeah,
liberal.
that's huge too.
I talk to friends that are law enforcement down south that, you know, would have went to his shooting and they tell you right on the DA comes out right on the spot and says, yep, good.
Good.
You know, and then the follow-up investigation takes place, but they already put out a preliminary, yep, suspect had a firearm, you know, justifiable.
I have two more questions for you.
Mhm.
We'll wrap it up if anyone else has a question. One of them is kind of silly. I'm a Connecticut driver. I drive on the highways. Speed limit, 65.
Mhm.
Everybody, 70, right?
Mhm.
No, I go 80.
That was my first
And I
one.
will
You're driving
attest
too
to
slow.
No, okay, so
Only if it's safe.
So yeah, and if you're going 80, then you know if you see the police cruiser, you slow down to 70, right, and you go back to 80. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not
Well, I did a lot of traveling. I traveled with musicians, and once we started driving further down, like into like the Southwest, especially Texas, speed limit 65. Everybody 64.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
It's the
Nobody
South-
went
South-
over it.
What part
Nobody
of Texas were you
went
in?
over it.
She goes there all the
I go to
time.
Texas
it was-
every summer.
it was Route
They
10.
fly by me.
Yeah, it was Route 10. Maybe notice it more when you live there, but I noticed it just overall. You know, traveling all around the country, all of a sudden we came to these few states where it seemed like people really obeyed the law. And I wonder what would a state cop in Texas think if he came up here and just saw everyone just whizzing by? You know,
Well, you
so-
have to remember, just the state police right now are down a tremendous amount of officers. So they're dealing with, I mean, hundreds, even thousands.
I'm not
at
even
this point.
asking a
But
question.
I know,
I'm
but
just
so they don't
so-
have time necessarily to sit
Yeah.
on the highway. So the drivers are gonna go faster. I mean, there's times of the months that they have to. No.
But there's there's a
but-
mentality.
No,
Yeah.
law enforcement down south is set up very differently. Like state police or highway patrols, that's all they do is highway patrol. And then it's usually a county sheriff's department that did what we did, where they had the towns that are too small to have their own police department,
The county police, yeah, we don't have
county
that.
sheriffs.
Oh.
And then, and then the larger cities have their own police department. And then, the whole mindset towards law enforcement down south is a lot different as well. Like,
Yeah, completely different.
yeah.
I mean, like I used to tell my friends all the time, there's one trooper on 95, basically from the Baldwin Bridge in Old Salem to the Rhode Island border. So if you see him with a car pulled over, you can do 100 the whole way.
Not
If there's
to
an
men-
accident, you can do 100 the whole way. If you see one, if you pass one, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, if you pass one in that area,
Hear that, Shirley?
good to go.
Not to mention, John's incidents mostly took place at night. That's when we're running heavy. Like you usually have at least one of the Jewett City resident troopers on, and then a 5 East and a 5 West patrol. During day shift, when they ran what's called the Big Five, those two patrols would merge into one patrol. So one trooper would be responsible for Voluntown, Lisbon, Sprague, Jewett City, Griswold, and 395
That's a huge
from
area.
Norwich to the Troop
Holy.
D line.
Wow.
Huge area.
And at least in that area, you had 395 running through it, so you could get there relatively quickly. One of the troops that I previously went to, they had Big East, which was Wyndham Heights, Wyndham, Columbia, Lebanon, Basra, and Franklin. And then Route 2 from 17 down to 395 where Norwich picks it up.
So it's one guy for all those things.
You're not gonna get one going over.
So if you're doing 80, you're probably doing probably relatively safe.
And then you said something when you were reading. Actually, there was a sentence that came out. I think that broke it up a little bit, and I wanted to ask you. You wrote, "It was over. Help was on the way." And what did you mean by help? Do you remember the part?
I'm trying to
When you
think.
heard
Was
the
it
sirens after the
When you
shooting,
heard the sirens.
after the
Yeah,
Joe
just
show.
like I said, I mean,
What was help?
help was,
The backers.
well, back up, yeah. No, just in your mind, you know, at that moment you're all alone. And then once that really sounds, it's like, all right, this will be over in a second. Once people started, you know, it kind of took the pressure off.
You just chose the word help. It seemed like there was still some kind of negative influence.
No, I think it was,
situation.
no, it wasn't. I think it was more reassuring, a reassuring help. I think they might be doing it. They can help me deal with this together.
It's good to have backup.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any more questions? Well, John, I guess we're done.
So thank you very much. Appreciate it for having us.
It's time to make some
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks.